Welcome back to the show, fueled by Hattie B's Hot Chicken on this Tuesday morning. National championship decided, the 2024 college football season in the books. We know that draft season is well underway, even though the college football season has just concluded. And it's always our great pleasure to be joined by Dane Brugler of The Athletic. You can read him at theathletic.com for all of his draft insights and acumen as we lead up to, in particular, the Titans having the number one overall draft pick. Good morning, Dane.
Good morning. How are you guys?
We're good, brother. So we took in the national championship game. I know you typically take a look at and you produce content for The Athletic year-round, but I know you took a look at how many draft picks ahead of as you continue your draft preparations, not ahead of your draft preparations. I know those are well underway. How many draft picks are on the two respective rosters that we watched last night? How many did you come up with?
So I came up with 22, but there's a big difference in terms of the number Notre Dame's going to produce this year and the number Ohio State's going to produce. Obviously, Notre Dame, a good team, a lot of young talent. Ohio State just the far more talented player or team in terms of draftable players. And down the road, 2026, 2027, we'll see more Notre Dame players go to the draft. But this Ohio State team, they have a chance to break the record. Since the draft went to 7 rounds back in 1994, the most draft picks in a single year is Georgia. They had 15 2 years ago. This year, Ohio State's got a chance, a pretty good chance. And I'm being conservative by saying they're going to have at least 15, if not 16 or 17 draft picks. So some of it will depend on some of these juniors. They've got some decisions to make. The deadline for anybody that play the national title game is the 24th this week. So we'll see what the underclassmen decide to do. But no mystery why Ohio State won the national title with as much talent and draftable talent that they have on that roster.
Would Jeremiah Smith be the number one non-quarterback in this year's draft class were he able to come out?
There's not a doubt in my mind. He is that good. And we're talking about a 19-year-old. I mean, what's he going to look like at 23?
It's crazy.
You know, like it physically, he's already looks like he's 23, 25. But and what you love about Jeremiah Smith is it's not like it's just he's bigger than everybody, faster than everybody. Like he understands how to play at the position. You can tell how hard he works at it in terms of setting up his routes, the pacing, the ball skills are tremendous. So yeah, it'll be interesting to watch him the next 2 years because you can't do better than what he did this year. He won a national title as a freshman. He was the Big Ten wide receiver of the year. He had over 1,300 receiving yards. He set a ton of Ohio State records. Now you're going to, bring in a new quarterback next year. Who knows? The offense is going to lose a lot. I don't know if the production's going to look quite the same, but I do know that the talent is exactly what NFL teams are looking for. So and maybe the best example of what Ohio State has done the last few years is Emeka Egbuka, one of the best receivers in this draft, has a good chance to be a first-round pick. Nobody has more catches in Ohio State history than Emeka Egbuka, and he was probably never the most talented receiver in his 4 years at Ohio State. Because when he got there, you're talking about Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, and then Jackson Smith-Njigba, and then Marvin Harrison Jr., and then this year, Jeremiah Smith. He was probably never the most talented receiver on that roster, yet he's still going to be a first-round pick. He's still going to be a really good NFL receiver, which is just kind of crazy thinking about that receiver depth chart the Buckeyes have had the last few years.
At DP Brugler is where you follow him on Twitter. Theathletic.com is where you can read our friend Dane Brugler, who joins us now.
And then Carnell Tate, who I know is not draft eligible, would probably be wide receiver 1 on the majority of teams across college football. It's just insane, Dane. Yeah. I'm curious if there's any sort of run that you think back to and you think about one program churning out this much NFL talent at one specific position. Like Georgia had it rolling at the running back position. I guess Alabama, take your pick, at the position that they were just pumping out draft picks. But something like this high-end first-round talent, is there anything you can even compare it to?
LSU's got a pretty good, you think about Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, and then what Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas did last year. That's pretty good. That is a pretty impressive run. Ohio State has just done it maybe a little bit longer and just more volume. Guys that are, first round picks, but then have staying power in the NFL. And so, it's Alabama had a couple top 15 picks at receiver. And then, the year before, Jerry Jeudy, Alabama's had a good run, but yeah, that LSU run at receiver is pretty close. But it just, LSU, Ohio State, they're really fighting it out for that wide receiver U crown.
I feel like we do this all the time with quarterbacks that have an elite wide receiver core in college football. Does it or does it not hurt their draft stock? Is it a big reason for their success? Does that work against them? And I'd ask that about Will Howard to you. I mean, where does he kind of stack up for you after that performance yesterday in terms of maybe being one of those QB3 candidates where it feels like there's room for movement, right, for one of those guys to climb the boards?
Yeah, and the thing that impressed me the most about Will Howard throughout this year is just the mental toughness. Go back to the Penn State game. He throws a pick six on the first drive, and this is his hometown state. That Penn State, the school he wanted to play at, before the game, he said, we'll see if I'm good enough. Like, there was so much pressure on him, throws a pick six. Most guys are going to wilt after that. He comes back, leads a touchdown drive. They end up winning that game. When he did that, it was like, okay, this guy's wired a little bit differently. And then to go through have that Michigan loss, which wasn't on Will Howard. It was more on the game plan and the play calling. But then you go through the playoff and he has the success that he did. And yeah, it certainly helps that you're throwing to the Jeremiah Smiths, the Emeka Ibukas, the Carnell Tates. You've got a two stable running back group that are both going to be top 100 picks next year. And the offensive line played well, which was a kind of the unsung hero of this Ohio State run, especially Donovan Jackson moving from left guard to left tackle, replacing Simmons, who got hurt in the Oregon game. So there were a lot of factors around him that certainly help. And that'll kind of be used against him a little bit when you talk about, all right, what's not to like about him is, okay, how much is he doing on himself and how much was just the supporting cast? But he deserves credit for making the throws, being on time with his throws and his decisions. He's a mobile athlete. And that was the big reason Ohio State moved on from Kyle McCord, is they wanted more mobility. They wanted a guy that could use his legs and be a threat. And Kyle McCord went on and had a great season at Syracuse, but I don't think they win this national title without the element that Will Howard brought with his legs and that mobility. So, it's something that will help him throughout the process. This is a weird draft class in terms of the quarterbacks because we have, the two guys at the top. I would even say it's probably one guy at the top. And then you have a group that's second and third tiers, rounds, say between picks 50 and 120, where there's some interesting quarterbacks. And Will Howard's in that mix with guys like Kyle McCord, with guys like Tyler Shuck from Louisville, talking about Quinn Ewers, Jackson Dart. Like, there's some interesting quarterbacks in that group that a team might look at it and say, instead of using a first on one of these guys, let's just wait till the second or the third or the fourth, and we'll take a flyer on a Riley Leonard. We'll take we'll try one of these guys and see if it works out. If not, then we're not investing huge draft capital at the position. We can go back and maybe use a first rounder next year. So this is a really unique quarterback year in terms of not having the guys at the top that just knock your socks off, but then also having some pretty decent depth where you can talk yourself into one of these guys. And that'll come during the next few months when the coaches and the play callers get involved. That's where, I think, the scouts have already put in their grades on these quarterbacks, but once the offensive coordinators, once the head coaches get involved, that's what could change things a little bit. Because if you connect with one of these guys during the interview process, that'll go a long way to where he'll stack up on the final draft board.
Yeah, and that's kind of the conundrum that a team like Tennessee is in, having a wretched football season the way that they did, the number one overall pick now. And as you described it, an interesting quarterback class specifically. I know that you've mocked Cam Ward to the Titans in some of the preliminary stuff that you've done, Dane, but would you, if it was you making the pick, would you consider potentially one of the strategies that you've just outlined, which is potentially addressing other needs on a roster that's pretty bereft of talent, even though they've spent 2 years now trying to get it up off the mat, and potentially look at one of these later round quarterbacks as a stopgap type of situation or a flyer? Also considering that Tennessee does not have a third round pick, 66th overall, belongs to the Kansas City Chiefs because of that L'Jarius Sneed trade.
You go into the process with an open mind and say, look, we would love to upgrade the quarterback position if we can. We at least want to bring in competition. And, if I had a bet on one of these quarterbacks in this draft, it would be Cam Ward because of just how electric he is. He can create big plays. but he's so loose at the position that it does, that will backfire at times. I'm encouraged by the fact that he's gotten better every year. You go back to Incarnate Word and what he did at Washington State, and then what he did this past year at Miami, he got better and better and better. And so there's, as the decision making and the accuracy continue to develop, it feels like this guy can be an NFL starter and be one of the difference makers if he continues to grow. But it feels just like there is risk involved. And so if I'm the Titans, I'm going into this process saying, I'm letting every other team know, hey, we're looking at these quarterbacks really hard. And that way, even if I'm not taking a quarterback at 1, I'm going to put a little bit of, I'm going to make the Giants nervous at pick 3. I'm going to make the Raiders nervous at pick 6. So the phone lines are open. And I think the ideal scenario is you get a call from the Giants and they offer, it's not going to be like what the Panthers gave up to the Bears to go up to number 1 pick 2 years ago. It won't be that type of haul, but hey, if I can get multiple day 2 picks or whatever it ends up being, that's great. Because then I can go back to number 3 and I still get either Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter, and then I have other day 2 picks to play with. I can, if I want to address quarterback there, and you're going into this process with a new GM, so there's plenty of kind of unknowns about what does he think of Will Levis? What does he think about so there's definitely some unknowns. But if I was going into this process, if I'm the Titans, you never want to, whenever you have the number 1 pick or a top 10 pick, it's a good thing because you have a chance to get better and a good player. But relative to other top 10s or number 1 overall picks, this is a year that's just a little bit weaker than others. But at the same time, it's still, an advantageous position. You're in a place of power. So even though it's not a great quarterback group, I'm letting everybody know that I'm open for business and I want to look at these quarterbacks. So, we have our options open.
I know, and you may not know Mike Borgonzi at all, but I know you move in a lot of these circles, Dane. He's obviously, as you mentioned, the new general manager here, coming over from the Kansas City Chiefs after 16 years with that organization, helping to contribute to the rise that they've had from a 4-win team his first year to now 3-time Super Bowl champion in that span and 7 consecutive AFC championships. The structure of the Chiefs front office and their personnel department specifically is being studied more and more because of the level of success that they've had. I wonder if you do know anything about Mike Borgonzi that you might be able to share with Titans fans.
Well, no, and I do remember Mike so this back in 2015, summer of 2015, I interviewed with the Chiefs for a scouting position, and that was John Dorsey was there, and Chris Ballard, and I had to do evaluations and then present them to a room of probably 15, 20 guys, the whole scouting staff. I know Mike was in there, some of the coaches. And so, I had a chance to meet him, and, he was a great guy. During my evaluations, when I'm giving, when I had to watch tape and then present my evaluation to the room, he asked a couple questions to me. I know it was really smart questions. He's a really smart guy, just based on my limited interactions with him. I think that obviously you want to, it's a brain drain, right? You want to get the programs that are successful, the teams that have winning records. You want to get that and bring it to your building. And based on what I know from him, it feels like he's a guy that can do that. Now, you have to show that you can do it through the draft. You have to build the roster. So it'll be interesting to see. How close does he see this roster to being, competing for the division? How close, what does he want to do? At what positions does he feel like he needs to attack the most? And he's going into a situation with the number 1 overall pick. And that's why I think, the best case scenario is you trade back and you get more draft picks, because he's going to want to build things, basically, in the way he wants to build a roster, and you do that through the draft. And so if I had to guess right now, I'd say there's a good chance that they are going to look to trade back and accumulate that draft wealth and try to build this team in different spots, those key positions, similar to the way that the Chiefs did.
Just an aside, since we're talking about front office structures or just kind of around them, the job of general manager in today's NFL, we're kind of working through the structure of what the Titans are setting up here between the president of football operations and Chad Brinker. Mike Borgonzi is a general manager, as opposed to what most people, I think, have had in their heads of what a general manager is, which is one person who's probably been a scout at some point in their career, probably worked their way up through multiple levels of an organization after being a scout. But it's not just one person doing these jobs anymore, Dane. And I wonder how much bigger the job of personnel roster construction has gotten, where it has to be delegated this way.
Yeah, well, you hit the nail on the head. There's just so many cap space, and how you're managing the different contracts, and there's just so many elements to this. And the biggest thing, you look at the most successful organizations, is just the teams that are all on the same page. There's no infighting. There's no, everybody has a clear vision of the way you want to build it. So that's why we see a lot of teams kind of, they don't want, you try to line it up so the GM and a head coach are on the same timeline. And obviously the Titans doing it a little bit differently. So you just, hope that GM head coach relationship gets off to a great start, and they have a similar vision with how they want to build this. The delegation of power needs to be understood from the start in terms of who has final control over the 53. How are we going to delegate, in the war room, what's it going to look like when we build this board, and who's going to make the final decision? And just, you don't want any type of infighting from that perspective. And that's something that's so important to organizational success, obviously. So, we'll see, coming into, because Mike's coming from, in the Chiefs, where Andy Reid has Veach is obviously a GM there, but Andy Reid has a huge say in what goes on there. And so how will that work here with the coaching staff? It'll be really interesting to see how it plays out.
Dane Brugler of The Athletic here with us on 104.5 The Zone, talking a little draft on the heels of last night's national championship game.
Dane, it's not necessarily a need with the Titans, but I am fascinated at the running back class in this upcoming draft, both with how the value of the position is being talked about with the years Saquon Barkley and Derrick Henry have had, and just how deep this class is. How do you think those two things kind of merge together in relation to the way running backs are going to fly off the board in a couple months, and where to you does Dylan Sampson out of Tennessee stack up in all of that?
Yeah, running back is the best position this year in terms of the most depth. It is a loaded group, and it usually, we usually get a lot of underclassmen that come out. This year's no different. I think we're at double-digit underclassmen that are in this class. But you have the headliner at the top, obviously, with Ashton Genty. I think Caleb Johnson from Iowa is a first-round pick. A couple second-rounders with, I think Dylan Sampson's right there with Travion Henderson, Amarian Hampton, a chance to be a top 50, top 60 pick when it's all said and done. But I think the thing that hurts, especially a guy like Ashton Genty, a guy that hurts him is teams are going to look at this depth and say, we could wait until the third round and feel great about getting a Devin Neal from Kansas or Woody Marks from USC. The list just goes on and on of talented running backs in this class that, hey, let's get the tackle here in the first, and we'll get our running back third round, fourth round, and feel great about the guy we're getting. And that's why I wouldn't be surprised if, Ashton Genty's a top 5 player in this draft just in terms of talent. I wouldn't be surprised if he's available at pick 20, just because how some teams look at the running back position and say, not that it's not important, but we feel like we feel great about the guy we can get in the third round, and we feel like we can answer a different need earlier in this draft. So the running back class is loaded. And to your point about the free agent class we had last year with Saquon, Derrick Henry, and those guys, it's the opposite with this year's free agent class. It's not a great running back free agent group. And so I think a lot of teams are going to target the draft to go get these running backs. And we'll see how that affects strategy with when teams, how early they draft these guys.
Dane, appreciate you fitting us into your schedule. I know it's about to get a hell of a lot more busy here in the coming weeks and months, but always good to catch up with you. Appreciate you making us smarter, and I'll probably see you at the Combine, bud.
All right, man. Looking forward to it. Thanks, guys.
That's Dane Brugler of The Athletic with us on 104.5 The Zone. Always good insights from him, theathletic.com. Well worth your subscription on a variety of different fronts, but in particular, I don't know if there's a more comprehensive draft guide than Dane Brugler's Beast.
There's not.
Each and every year, definitively. You're declaring this?
No, there's not.
Okay.
Not that I've seen.
Very good. Do we have things to give away?
We do. Tell us what made you say, oh no, this week. 615-737-1045 for a chance to win 2 tickets to see Shinedown's Dance Kid Dance Tour with special guests Beartooth and Morgan Wade on Saturday, May 10th at Bridgestone Arena, plus a $100 A Moment's Peace gift card.
Excellent. So if you want those 2 Shinedown tickets and a $100 gift card to A Moment's Peace Salon and Day Spa, call us 615-737-1045 and tell us what in sports made you say, oh no.